What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of the Locker Room Podcast. Today, I'm with Coach Justin Jehn, the head coach of West Salem varsity football team. He took the team all the way to the Wisconsin Division III state championship game, where they lost to the Monroe County Cheesemakers, 35-14. Thanks for joining the show, Mr. Jehn.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So first, I'm going to start off by asking you when you developed your love for football. Tell me a little bit about your high school career and what team you played for.
Yeah, good question. I played high school football at DC Everest High School in the Wausau area, and I was on our varsity team during the playoffs of 1996, and then was a starting quarterback on our team in 97 and 98. In 96, we were runners-up in Division I, so that was a neat experience. In 98, we were state champions.
Oh, wow.
And we were the first, that was the year the playoffs expanded to 14 weeks. So we were one of the first 14-0 teams in the state.
That's
so
awesome.
That was fun. I played under a legendary coach in Wisconsin, Wayne Steffenhagen. He's in the Wisconsin Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So well known around the state of Wisconsin for coaching football and actually high school track as well. And shortly after graduating, I kind of went back and did some coaching with them in the summer and whatever before I went off to school. And that's kind of when the passion for coaching and for football really took hold. I participated in other sports in high school, but that kind of was the kickoff point for me for football. Yeah.
Were you a quarterback? Okay. So
I
were you
was,
like
yeah.
a running quarterback or more of a pocket passer?
No, I was more of a pocket passer. I had a player on my team who played college football at the University of Kentucky. So he was a speedster. We did a nice job at getting him the football and letting him make plays.
Yeah, that's easy.
And we had a good running game, but my role was to hand the ball off.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when did you start coaching at West Salem?
I started here in 2003. The high school team had made a state championship run in 2002, and were runners up then. And I was looking to get coaching in the area. I coached at Winona Cotter Middle School in 2002, and was hoping to get closer. Not that 1 hour drive or approximately each day. And I reached out to Coach Sackett, was the head coach at that time.
Yeah.
And just looking to, like I said, get involved more locally. And he, gave me that opportunity. And I was an assistant here for 11 years before I got the head coaching job. So been here since 2003. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, but really appreciate, being able to connect with players at the high school.
Sure. Was it 2007 or 2008 that you guys won state?
Yeah, 2007.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So was that more special to you as an assistant or this year as a head coach?
Yeah, it's there's differences, in both years. Obviously, winning it was amazing. As an assistant coach, I felt like I was somewhat involved, but certainly others were. I think of Coach Sackett. Mr. Malott was coaching at that point in time, so Coach Malott at that point in time. Coach Gorniak was still coaching then, and so a lot. Those guys were certainly the central architects of what we were doing,
Yeah.
But fun always to have those relationships with players and coaches and celebrate that. This year was, quite special in the fact that we were in Division III, which we had been in Division IV previously for state championship runs. That we beat on Alaska level 4 in a local game, with both teams being local. It was neat to play at La Crosse Logan. And certainly as a runner-up, there's difference there. And to your point, it's different being the head coach.
For sure, yeah.
You're forced as a head coach to have your post-game speech be, are we going to win or are we going to lose? You got to prepare both of those. So, I was able to communicate how super proud we were of our players, of our team, and it's still a special piece. it's just different. And, certainly great to bring home a silver ball and have those experiences that our players are going to remember for a lifetime is a pretty special piece.
Yeah, made the school year super exciting too.
Yeah, cool.
So I remember going to some of your youth football camps years back. And the thing I remember the most was how positive you were, like with your coaching style. Marcus Karstens, he's my mentor for this SCP. And he had you on his show a few months ago, I think.
Yeah.
And one of the things you guys talked about was your coaching style and that your staff isn't the type that likes to yell and scream all the time and more just like use teachable moments to build your players up. One thing I think is really important in sports is being able to stay calm and composed when adversity comes. Mm-hmm. And I think it's essential for coaches to model that for their players. And I think you guys did a great job of that.
Oh, thank you.
So another question is, so it's always important to get players to buy into your program, and it seemed like your entire team bought into that this year. So let's talk about some of those players. First, let's start with the quarterback, Brett McConkey. I think I was teammates with Brett for a very long time in basketball and baseball, and one thing I appreciate about him is how calm he was in big moments. So there had to be a lot of pressure and expectations for him going into this season, but he handled it very well. In the semifinal against Onalaska, he threw one or maybe even two picks early on, I think. He could have gotten down on himself and all that, but he kept his composure and led you guys to a huge, stunning 37-14 victory over the Hilltoppers. So how much do you appreciate Brett as a leader?
Oh, a ton. You certainly get to see him play baseball and basketball, as you referenced there, and having a chance to coach him. He got some varsity experience as a sophomore, which was our COVID year, and he played 3 games for us there, and just has that demeanor of cool, calm, but competitor, big time. And we saw that as junior year too, but, as you know, CJ was here then as a brother, and they play off each other real nicely. They're a great combo. So certainly we had high expectations of Brett as a leader this year, but not really sure how that would totally shake out without CJ there.
Yeah.
But the relationships that Brett has with his other athlete teammates, as you mentioned, is special. I think his teammates see how competitive he is, how cool and calm he is, and the decision-making process is, from what we ask him to do on the football field, is he's involved so much. And I think one of the things that really helped him overcome those mishaps early in that Onalaska game was he was playing defense for us too. Very rarely did Brett and I have time to reflect or have a chance for him to get down on himself because he threw a pick. He's right back out there making tackles and getting our defense aligned. So
it's probably good to not have a chance to take a break mentally, so you don't really even have time to worry about what happened.
Didn't have a chance to dwell on it at all. Yeah. But a great leader for us, and certainly a huge factor in the success we had. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now let's talk about Luke Noel. So I remember you and Marcus talking about all the touchdowns he had this year. I think it was 29, 27 offensive and 2 defensive.
Yeah, you're right.
So, however, through it all, he stayed humble, which is very impressive. He could have got a little arrogant, but he never did. There are 2 types of leaders in sports: the guy who's vocal and fires up the team, and then the type who leads by example and always listens and hustles. And I think he's the type that leads by example, which is really cool to see. As you said during your homecoming speech, Luke came to you in the spring and presented you the theme of the season, which was Seek and Destroy. So how impressed were you with Luke's play on the field this season, as well as him being a role model in the weight room and practice field?
Yeah, I agree with you. He is a leader by example, and he's grown in his ability to lead vocally as well. But certainly guys follow him because of his performance. Yeah. It was fun to listen to him get interviewed by the paper late in the season because he's so it comes so natural to him, both playing linebacker and running back, that he had a hard time, I thought, articulating that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because it's just so natural to him. And the skill set and the things that he's able to do on the field are things that cause players to get behind him and perform at a high level as well. He was selected as All-State for his play at linebacker, and I think that was well deserving. His touchdowns, total touchdowns, ranked up there in the state as well. So certainly a complete player, and that ability to lead by example, as you mentioned, on the field, but also in the weight room in the off season, was a thing that got our senior class to follow him, got our underclassmen to follow him, and I'm hoping, as you mentioned, that leadership by example, that some of our younger players will follow in his mold as well, so that we continue to have that propagate throughout the program.
Yeah. So this will probably be your toughest question of the day. If you had to pick to go an entire season with Luke on offense or defense, which one would you choose?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I know we would miss him greatly on the offensive side, and as the offensive play caller, I would get nervous to say I don't want Luke.
Yeah.
But I do know that he can have an impact on the game on the defensive side as well. So I'd probably give him up on offense and try to figure out ways to score 29 touchdowns
Definitely.
so that we could stop people defensively.
Mm-hmm. So another player, one of the most exciting offensive players on your team was Chris Calico.
Yeah.
To me, it seemed like he played kind of the Deebo Samuel role for you guys. Like, he was an incredible receiver, but he also could line up in the backfield, take handoffs. He was a lockdown corner. And if you ever got in a pinch, he could probably even throw the ball. Mm-hmm. So he brought a lot of explosiveness and quickness to the team. How fun was it to scheme up plays for an explosive player like him?
Yeah, that was you described him really well. I hadn't considered it like the Deebo Samuel role, but it really was. We got to a spot late in the year where he was the only guy we were running jet sweeps with, because he just had that knack to be able to cut it back, or the speed to take it outside because of his just agility and quickness. We relied on him a little bit more out of the backfield earlier in the season, but then tried to get him the ball. We had a couple of really unique plays, special plays just for him that we tried to hit in the Fox Valley game. We tried to hit in the Notre Dame game, and you're right. We had a play where he was going to play halfback and throw the ball. Yeah. We just never put out there. But I think he's, just a dynamic player. And, you mentioned him defensively. He's a two-time all-conference player on the defensive side, and his ability not only to defend, but that instinct to come up and fill on the run. He'll be greatly missed. He's a great player.
Yeah, for sure. Another senior I'm really excited to talk about is Andy Johnson. Yeah. I went to 3 games total this year, and in all 3 games I noticed something about him. What makes him a special player is his ability to move on from mistakes and not let them get to his head. In my opinion, the most important characteristic of a star athlete is having a short memory. Yeah. When athletes are afraid to fail or they get down on themselves after messing up, that can ruin their whole career, in my opinion. Andy has a confidence about him that separates him from other players. The first game I went to was homecoming. He had a wide open drop pass. Then a few plays later, he caught a screen and took it 70 or 80 yards for a touchdown. Then in the semifinal game against Onalaska, it wasn't really him, but like the whole team in large was kind of struggling the first few drives. Like I said, Brett threw a couple picks. But I'll never forget the throw that Brett had to Andy for that touchdown. He completely laid out and dove for it. And I think that sparked the team. Yeah. From there, you guys didn't really look back. In my opinion, that was the most exciting high school game I've ever been to. Just to beat Onalaska, a nice field like Logan High School, that was really cool. Mm-hmm. And then in the state game, he had a drop or 2 throughout the game, and the game was starting to get away from the team. And I remember, I think it was like a 2-point conversion. He got just nailed by their running back, who was huge. He slowly walked back to the bench, sat down, collected himself, and then the very next drive, he caught a slant for a touchdown, which creates a really special memory for him to catch one in Camp Randall. And one of the main themes of my podcast is overcoming adversity. I think Andy's a great example of that. Yeah. So how much did you enjoy coaching him over the years?
Yeah, Andy's a special guy. Certainly somebody that we saw as a leader in our program. He only named certain number of captains, and we even went over that a little bit this year. But bar none a leader, helping other players out. Andy met with me in the off season. I think it was before his senior year, and we talked about his alignment and how he felt like he could be aligned in a different location and really help the team out. And so that shows his being a student of the game, his knowledge of the game. You pointed out some of those excellent plays that I remember as well. The big catch against Onalaska, but what you also don't necessarily see in some of those stats is, and the other play you mentioned, trying to go back to him after a drop. Andy didn't have a lot of drops. He's a sure-handed receiver. He is on the defensive side of the ball just a grinder for us. He got people lined up, which I think unless you're part of the program, you don't realize that piece of making sure that Brett and Chris and BK are in the right spots.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other piece on the defensive side is, and I know Andy's not a selfish guy either, so that makes it unique. But as you go through the conference season, he didn't necessarily have the stats to get the accolades, but he had the biggest stats in the playoff run, which led to us playing in Camp Randall. So exciting for him to have that touchdown at Camp Randall as well, because I think that just caps off a really good playoff run for a really good senior.
Yeah, and he's also really smart too. Like, I sit by him in calculus, and Mr. Milne will ask us a question, everyone will be stuck, and then Andy will just say the answer, and everyone's just stunned how he knew.
Yep.
But yeah,
you see that on the field too.
For sure. How much emphasis as coaches did you guys put in the weight room, and how much do you think consistently lifting helped you throughout the season?
Yeah, it's something that we certainly have made strides on. The ability for players to buy into that is really where the rubber meets the road. We were consistent during the season at Wednesday morning lifts, so we would come in at 6:30 and do a team lift in the morning, and then we would typically lift on a Monday as well. Our Coach Krause is our head freshman coach and does a lot of the coordination in the weight room for strength and conditioning, and he did a lot of work for us too during the season. We had a great core group of guys who was consistent during the summer months as well.
Yeah.
And I really think that's where you see gains. It's hard to gain during the season. And ultimately it comes down to the players, and they did a nice job at committing to being in the weight room. I think that was one of the things that caused us to be able to be in games we maybe shouldn't have been in from a physical standpoint or a size standpoint. And we were able to wear teams down late in the season that you can only attribute to being in the weight room. And I remember Coach Wagner mentioning that after the basketball run last year as well. So, a lot of his attribute to our guys, our current, going to be seniors, are antsy to get in there and make gains in the weight room too. It's a really important place, and Coach Krause and our crew is Coach Seibert as well are really buying into that.
Yeah, that's great. So I know that Colin Novi is super committed to the weight room. I'm sure he set a good example for the younger players on how much dedication it takes to really put on a lot of muscle. So if there is an unsung hero of the team, I'd probably pick him. I'd also consider Jacob Helgesson, just because he came in halfway through the season and improved a lot with his kicking along the way.
Yeah, he did.
So if there was one person other than those two that you could pick for like an unsung hero, whether they were just an X factor or just on the sideline being positive, cheering on their teammates, who would you pick?
Yeah, wow, you limit me to one. I'm going to mention a couple while I pick the one. Trey Athnos, I think, really came on during the season. We needed him to play, pretty much one way on the defensive side and did a great job. Aaron Mankey, we find out just the other day that he had a pretty significant knee injury and played, over half the season on that. But the other guy I think that was committed to the weight room, like you mentioned with Colin, is Cameron Seide. We had a package that we played against Aquinas and against Onalaska, and we used it here and there. But we called it the Cam package, which was Cam being in as an extra lineman. And, he was able to be in that spot and make an impact for us because of his commitment to the weight room. And he did that throughout the off season, even during the season, going in extra on his own, and really just a huge heart. Was had a knee injury early on where he just had a lot of swelling in the knee, no structural things. We had to get that swelling down. It took a couple weeks. Got hurt in the Aquinas game where we were using him. Kind of got stepped on and was able to come back from that a couple weeks later as well. So just that overcoming adversity, as you're mentioning, and really kind of overachieving from maybe what people would expect from him are what make Cam stand out.
Yeah. So it sounds like Luke Baginski could be the starter at quarterback next year. How excited are you to watch him grow, and what does he need to do this summer to be ready for that moment?
Yeah, we saw a lot of good things from Luke in the JV games. He's has big play potential. He's a lot like Brett in the sense that he is dynamic and dangerous from a running standpoint as well as a passing standpoint. The neatest thing I think so far about Luke is shortly after the season was over, he came in on a study hall, sat down and closed the door and asked, what do we have to do to be successful next year? So that leadership standpoint and that willingness to work is tremendous. He's a multi-sport athlete, so involved in basketball and baseball as well. So certainly he's a guy who is going to need to spread his time, and we understand that. I think he's a youngster, coming in as a junior.
Yeah. You
got to be able to lead juniors and seniors. Mm-hmm. And I think, part of it is his performance on the field will help that. Certainly being humble and coachable, I think is going to be something we see, but is something that he's got to put into practice as well. And I'm confident that he can do that, but it's something that he's got to show his teammates as well. And that willingness to learn and get after it as well is something that I think we'll see from him. It's just a matter of waiting that time to get back on the field in August to see it happen.
For sure. I'm sure you're looking for him to step into a leadership role this year, which is vital for quarterbacks. But if you had to pick another person or two who you're hoping to step up as a junior or senior next year, who would it be?
Certainly the two names that come to mind, probably because of their experience this year, would be Sam Stenberg and Evan Huth. Look at guys who are juniors, contributed quite a bit on the offensive and defensive lines this year, and have that natural leadership ability. Those are two that I'm looking forward to leading our group next year.
All right. So now I'd like to transition into another topic. I'm sure you guys had a lot of college coaches watching you guys this year. I know Kellen already committed to Southwest Minnesota State. Have any other players committed? And if not, are they interested in playing college football? I'm sure they've got offers by now.
Yeah, I think a few guys that are still feeling out, what might be a good fit for them are Luke, Noel, Brett McConkey, guys we've talked about before. Really, they need to decide, do they want to play, and then what's the best fit. I was joking with Brennan Kennedy the other day because I noticed that the University of Hawaii posted something on Twitter about needing playmakers at defensive back and wide receiver who were really fast. Yeah. And I sent that to Brennan because, that fits the mold. I'm not sure, obviously that I don't know that he's a D1 player or that he's even interested in that. But seriously, I think he could latch on to a place as well and contribute, to a program like UWL or something like that.
For sure. And the tricky thing with a lot of those guys is they play multiple sports. So Brett could go for baseball, Luke could go for wrestling. You never know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was really exciting, though, to have college coaches ask about players, which is pretty rare around here in Division III. I'm sure there was a ton of scouts at the championship game in Camp Randall. Do you think that ever became a distraction for your players or put too much pressure on them, or do you think they handled it pretty well?
Yeah, I thought they handled it pretty well. Kellen committed early in the season to Southwest Minnesota. Chris Calico committed to play baseball early in the season at Madison College. And, some of the later, really after the season, some of it because the college teams were still playing, a lot of local teams were still playing late in the playoffs too. So some of that stuff took place a little bit later. after the season ended, but I thought our guys handled it well when players schools showed interest.
Yeah. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this because I'm not really sure which way you're going to go with this. Mm-hmm. So leading up to the state championship game, what did the practices look like that week? It must have been hard to walk the fine line of working super hard and staying competitive, but also avoiding injuries and making sure your players were well rested. The most important thing is health in the playoffs. Was the preparation more fast-paced and intense or more laid back to avoid injuries?
Yeah, specifically the week of Monroe, we had some difficulty with weather. And so we really balanced. We were inside for part of one practice. We were outside a couple days. We actually went to Logan on the Wednesday before because our field was really, really soft and our footing was really bad. So it was interesting. I thought we would probably try to cut back our time on the field, but we were actually pretty close to what we had been. And the reason being is Monroe was such a different team than we had faced in terms of getting aligned and making sure our run fits were proper, as well as how to attack their size defensively. So we had a good balance, I think, of practice. Certainly, as you mentioned, at that point in the season, we can't be beating each other up in practice, so it wasn't very physical. And our players handled that well. We talked about being preparing well mentally when that was the right time, and then the short amount of time in practice when we got physical to be physical during that time. So it was a good balance. Our kids did that well.
Yeah. It had to be hard to prepare for the two huge running backs, or maybe one was a running back, one was a fullback for Monroe. In football, it's so hard to prepare for that type of size and strength. There's not a whole lot you can do to stop players like that because they're just so strong. So it had to be exhausting to try to stop that the whole game because they weren't really passing a lot, maybe like 10 times all game.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to go against the size that Monroe had with the running backs and the linemen?
Yeah, it ended up being, I think, a major piece of the outcome, which is what was their recipe all year. I think we were outsized probably in the Wapaka game, the Fox Valley game, and the Notre Dame game as well. And but our speed won the day, and that's a tough combo, right? Or a tough competition. What's going to win out? And we struggled with having our speed win out against Monroe, and that size wore us down, and ultimately, whether it's the people, the big guys in the trenches or those big running backs, as you mentioned, it does get exhausting to try to bring them down play after play when they're playing smash mouth football right at you. So.
Yeah. And it seemed like they were running to like the right side every time because I think they had a really big lineman, I heard. So I'm not surprised they went 13-0. They looked really strong and unstoppable.
Yeah.
That reminds me of when we played in the middle school state championship in basketball 2 years in a row. Xavier beat us twice in a row in the championship game because they had someone named Gus Yalden. As a 7th grader, he was 6'7". 8th grade, about the same. We all thought Peter was super tall because he was 6 foot at the time.
Sure.
Seemed really tall. That's the first time I ever thought Peter looked short. So even if we'd play good defense on Gus, he'd still shoot over us and score almost every time. He just committed to Wisconsin, so congrats to him on that.
Nice.
But sometimes size can just be so hard to prepare for.
Very true.
So the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to West Salem football is the season you guys had in 2019. The Panthers were 0-9. The season was full of injuries and tough losses. What was that experience like as a coach, and what did you learn?
It was rough. I really thought our players competed well, despite the fact that we were 0-9. If you look back at that, there's probably 5 or 6 plays that make us, if we make those 5 or 6 plays, we end up 4-5 instead of 0-9.
Yeah.
But when you have loss after loss after loss mounting up, it's certainly difficult as a coach to convince our players that we got a chance the next week. One thing you learn in that 0-9 season is just sometimes you got to cut your losses, and it's hard to do it, in the moment. But we got our younger players some reps that they maybe wouldn't have normally gotten,
Yeah.
and really tried to see what we had in some sophomores even. I think I learned a lot about leadership then, because everybody wants to celebrate when you're playing in the state championship game. That's not the case when you're not winning games.
For sure.
And to try to keep players and coaches hopefully heading in the right direction, the direction that you see for the program. That's tough when you got people thinking it's not right. So learn a lot about how to as you mentioned earlier, that trying to stay positive and using those experiences as learning tools, and not just beating each other down. We were all frustrated.
Yeah.
We didn't need people telling each other how bad we were. We knew we hadn't won a game, and it wasn't that we were bad. It was just we hadn't won a game. So those are things that you build on, and certainly as you get to playing the state championship a couple years later, you'd like to think some of those things transition over. I think players learn stuff too. How do we maybe it's be better teammates, or how do we work harder, or how do we commit in the off season differently than previous groups did? And again, hopefully that's something that gets passed along from year to year.
Yeah, I'm sure Brett and Luke, even if they weren't on the team, and a lot of the other kids in my grade, it had to motivate them to want to turn things around, just watching from afar that season. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure they're pretty motivated when they were on the team eventually.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to take a team from the bottom to the top in just 3 short years, which I think is pretty remarkable. How did you approach the next summer camp in 2020? I know COVID got in the way of some of that, but how were you able to bounce back so quickly?
Yeah, one thing certainly we value. We really value all of our players. And I've actually talked with, these upcoming seniors already about this. We value all of our players, but every year it's a new group. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at that summer of 2020 as being, this isn't the team that went 0-9. Mm-hmm. We've got a new group of seniors, new group of juniors, new group of sophomores, and this is an entirely new team. And I think they bought into that as well. Certainly with COVID, playing into that, we only played 4 games, and that was sort of a unique time as well. You try out some new players as well. We really, the thing that really took off for the COVID year for us was we had to really simplify, because we lost so much time preseason.
Yeah.
So if we're going to try to do these things, we got to do less, and we got to do them better. So we eliminated plays that we had run in the past. We decided we were only going to do certain pass plays to the right or to the left. Mm-hmm. And that simplicity that we grasped during that really summer and fall of COVID, I think caused us to teach our players better, caused our players to learn our schemes a little bit better and be able to execute them better. And really, this group of seniors was sophomores then, so really led to some of the success we saw the last 2 years.
What was your record that year?
We were 3-1. We lost our first game and then won the last 3.
So that had to be great to get a few wins under your belt, just even though it was a short season, but just to get the confidence back, I think.
Yeah.
So the journey of West Salem football over the last few years has been very special, I think. Like I said before, overcoming adversity is a major theme in this podcast. And this season, you guys proved that it's possible to make it through the hard times, not only in sports, but in life as well. That applies. Mm-hmm. So thank you and your team for making this one of the most exciting and memorable seasons in school history.
Yeah, thanks.
So before we end, I'd like to ask you a few fun questions.
Okay.
My Super Bowl prediction would be the Chiefs beating the Niners in a close game.
Okay.
The reason why they'd win is because I trust Mahomes over Brock Purdy, personally. So for a while, I was high on the Cowboys, but they've been struggling lately. They just lost 26-6 to Washington. So what would your Super Bowl prediction be?
Yeah, you throw out some great points there. I think I would take the Chiefs out of the AFC. I am going to go with, you know what, I'm going to change that. I'm going to take the Bills out of the AFC, and I'm going to take the 49ers out of the NFC. and I'm still going to go AFC. I'm going to take the Bills.
Yeah.
And here's why. I think the Bills' defense is solid. I think they've got a little special something with the Damar Hamlin piece.
For sure.
And I think the Bills do more with Josh Allen at quarterback than maybe anybody. He can run the ball. He can throw it a country mile. And I think they provide some balance that, I think the Chiefs, boy, did you see the ring around the Rosie play they had?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the creativity.
That was crazy.
But I just think the Bills have that little something special with Damar.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
The Niners are fun to watch too, though. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andy Reid's got to be the most exciting play caller in the league.
Yeah.
It doesn't even come close. So also, do you think Aaron Rodgers will return next season? Or do you want him to return? Or are you excited to move on to Jordan Love for the Packers?
That's a tough question, too. I really don't like how I feel like if we're Packer fans, I don't like feeling held hostage by our quarterback. And quite honestly, I didn't like it when I felt that way with Favre either. It would be interesting to see Rodgers back with receivers who are another year of experience. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I stand on Jordan Love. Out of Nevada, I didn't watch him a ton in college. Certainly, I think he's learned, but sitting under Rodgers. He did have a good, last part of a game, I think, when Rodgers got hurt this season. But I'm going to give you an answer. I wouldn't mind seeing Rodgers walk off into the sunset and seeing what we got with Love and 50-some million in cap space where we can add some tools.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because we'll have so much more room to play around with money and signing free agents. I think he's going to be done because he told Jamison Williams after the last game he did not want to share his jersey. He wanted to keep it. So he'll either retire, I think, or go to a new team. But I'm excited about Jordan Love for sure.
You think you can bear Rodgers in another jersey?
That'd be so weird.
It was weird seeing Favre in it, but
I feel like he might.
I'm interested in that aspect of the game. I follow coaching hires a ton, college and professional, so that part interests me because it's about team building, and I think you get a peek into an organization like that. But I'm not sure I could see him in another jersey and root for him.
That'd be weird. I think if I had to guess where he'd go, it'd probably be the Jets, just like Favre.
Okay.
Just because they're desperate there.
Yeah.
So the final question I have is something I just need to ask each guest at the end of each episode to help with marketing my podcast on social media.
Okay.
What is your favorite song?
Oh, favorite song. Right now, I would probably go with Build a Boat by Colton Dixon.
Okay, gotcha.
As you mentioned, our theme this year was Seek and Destroy. And Build a Boat is a song about Noah from the Bible. And it talks about Noah building this boat when everybody thinks he's crazy. And he's just trusting God's process in that. And I find that really cool just personally. But I also think that was something that we did throughout the season, and it connects with our theme. So, Build a Boat by Colton Dixon.
I've actually heard that one a lot on the radio, and I really like that one too.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Mr. Jehn, for taking the time out of your day to talk with me about the football season. It was a lot of fun. We could do it again if you want, and thanks for helping me jumpstart my SEP as well.
Yeah, awesome.